Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank our panel for being here today. Just for record notice, Secretary of State, New Mexico, would you mind pronouncing that name one more time? Make sure I'm going to try here in just a second to get it right. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member, it's Maggie Toulouse Oliver.
Toulouse. All right. Okay. All right. When I come back around in a minute, we'll see if I can remember that. Okay. Mr. Hicks, I want to start with you, if that's possible. This past March, Congress appropriated $380 million in grants for state election security expenses that were intended to update voting equipment and improve cybersecurity practices overall. Mr. Hicks, how much of these funds, or how many of these funds, have been dispersed to states?
All the money is going to be going to the states. So it's
you said all the. Would you repeat that answer? Did you say all the money will be going to?
right. So about $335 million has been dispersed right now, but 100% of that money has been requested.
And do you have a timeline as far as when the other $50 million or so would be?
We should have that money out within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. Secretary Toulouse Oliver and Mr. Hatch, how much did your state request, and how much have you received so far? We'll start with the Secretary of State.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Walker, our state requested the full amount of $3.6 million to which we are entitled based on population. We did request that full amount, and we have received that full amount.
Okay. Mr. Hatch?
Utah requested the same full amount, or not the same amount, but it came to about $4.2 million.
Okay. And have you received it as well?
Yes, we received it last week.
Good to hear. Mr. Hicks, what election security priorities are the majority of states using these funds to pursue? Do you have any information?
Yes, sir. Most of the states are looking to either do cybersecurity upgrades or purchase new voting equipment. About 75% of the money is going towards voter registration or cybersecurity or purchasing of new voting equipment.
Okay. Mr. Cribbs, from your experience, what is the importance that the Federal Government plays in maintaining the integrity of elections? Can you zoom out a little bit and just, without taking maybe 30, 40 seconds at the most, and give me an overview of what you see that role as?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So as Secretary Nielsen has said several times, election security is national security. DHS plays a supporting role to state and local officials, and it's important that we provide our cross-cutting cybersecurity expertise to help fill in some gaps at the state and local level where they may not have in-depth cybersecurity expertise. So what we can bring are broader learnings throughout the critical infrastructure community. We can help at the local level.
Let me follow up with that, if I could, please. What do you see, from your perspective, Congress's role in supporting states and counties' electoral administration? Would you speak to that?
Yes, sir. So it continue to enable me to do my job in support of state and local, support the Election Assistance Commission, and provide, if necessary, additional support, including resources.
Ms. Toulouse Oliver and Mr. Hatch, same question to you guys. What do you see Congress's role as far as assisting in this process?
Mr. Chair, Member Walker, I concur with Mr. Krebs. The continued provision of tools and resources for state and local jurisdictions to utilize, particularly as we get down the road with regard to our local entities. For example, states utilize centralized statewide voter registration databases. So while I'm managing that and overseeing it from my office, it's being utilized by 33 counties across the state of New Mexico, some of which may not even have full-time IT staff. So it's really important that we are able to conduct risk assessments and provide the tools that have already been provided at the state level. So we'll continue working with DHS, and we would love to have the assistance of Congress with regard to that.
Okay, Mr. Hatch, you want to follow up with that?
I agree with Secretary Oliver. The best way that the federal government can help is to provide assistance through resources, consulting, as well as dedicated and predictable funding so that we can identify with our needs how much we will be able to meet those needs financially.
Yeah. First 2 years I was here, I served on Homeland Security. I was amazed at how many times, really on a daily basis, that there are attempts from the Russians and their cyber hacking. That's a nonstop. In fact, it was all the way back in 2012 when I believe a former presidential candidate pointed out the concern as far as the geopolitical threat that Russia is. Mr. Hicks, I have a question for you. What advice does the Election Assistance Commission, your area, provide to state and local officials when evaluating vendors for cybersecurity?
Providing vendors. We operate under the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, so that's a voluntary system. If a vendor wants to submit a system for certification, then we would give them guidance on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.